Audiolivro Bom presents Minority and Terrorism by Félix Guattari. Whatever the catastrophic situation that was created by the phenomenon of the Red Brigades in Italy, the most important thing to do is to start a much more general debate within the movement. We have to understand that if there are around 2,000 active Red Brigade sympathizers, there are also tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, young workers and students, who share the same concerns as the Red Brigades.
The Red Brigades came into existence through the pressure of facts relating to the Bolshevik past, through the powerful influence of an old Stalinist history that has been swept aside. The Red Brigades are ideologically linked to some of the hardest elements in the Communist Party. That is, for the Red Brigades, there is a non-Berlinguerian party within the party's base, and this base is susceptible to the old call of Stalinism. Now, what can no longer last in communist parties is the party such as it is, in its old body. In the name of democratic centralism, the mystical union of the historic heads of the Red Brigades is being carried out through the sublimation of the organization of the party, even when the party doesn't exist. There is such malaise in the working class, such hopelessness among workers and in factories, that such a crude ideological action can have a big impact. We are witnessing the crisis, and we are living the decline of an old left. On the other hand, the power that we know is indefensible. It is foul. Pasolini was assassinated because he wanted to put Christian democracy on trial. But the way in which Pasolini wanted to try Christian democracy did not involve taking Aldo Moro and assassinating him, putting him in the trunk of a car, and bringing his body before the Communist Party headquarters. The trial he had in mind involved opening, for all the Italian people, the dossiers of the sinister affairs, the pillaging, theft, murders, and all the crimes committed during over 30 years of Christian democracy. The assassination of a class adversary is not a political project, it's not an alternative to a class society, and proletarian violence is no political strategy for a society. In fact, this violence is in the very process of bringing fascism back to Italy, or else laying the groundwork for a new totalitarianism. I say that everything that we know is indecent, unbearable. From one end of the planet to the other, the issue of the rights of man goes beyond the eastern borders and is gradually becoming a source of great concern in the West as well. At stake is a new humanism, both theoretical and practical.
I don't believe that intellectuals are the guardians of an ethics, and that they should be the first to judge, define, and condemn. It is up to us, above all, to assess with maximum lucidity what the solutions are. I have to say that the image of damned expiatory victims belong to the Red Brigades and the Red Army faction, and then, by extension, to Schleyer and Moro. Actually, what most bothered and upset us was perhaps less the murders of Schleyer and Moro than the way in which these murders were used. In particular, the photos that were circulated by these groupuscules were truly abominable. On the other hand, we have to outsmart the trick of trying to exorcise the underlying situation by reducing it to its symptoms, as ultimately these are all no more than symptoms: the Red Brigades, the Red Army faction, the activities of the Black Panthers during another period in other contexts. I agree with those who denounce this type of action, this type of conception or strategy, but I would still insist that the Red Army faction and the Red Brigades are indeed part of the movement. Whatever kind of impasse in which they find themselves, they, with perhaps more courage and absurdity, pushed the movement forward. This merits a minimum of solidarity on our part. In order to be able to speak, to have the right to interpellate these people and tell them that they are conducting the worst kind of politics, we cannot adopt the general attitude of universal condemnation without seeing that this type of violence is practiced everywhere and on other levels, on much more molecular and secret levels. Just look at how immigrant workers and entire segments of the population are treated. Therefore, with regard to this moral denunciation that so inflames the media, and on this issue alone I say no. It is true that this moral denunciation has to be undertaken, but it must be accompanied by a political and strategic denunciation, and it can neither serve nor justify the reinforcement of current repressive systems. It is for this reason that a number of us said those involved in the movement the 2nd of June, in the Red Army faction, etc., will take part in this gathering if they so desire, and that dialogue with them will continue. The idea of isolation is completely different when considered from the vantage point of the movement, as opposed to that of power and repression. Isolation has to be combated on the plane of both ideas and dialogue. This was the attitude taken by the different branches of the organized autonomy, and it would be totally absurd to think that we can resolve the problem by affirming any solidarity whatsoever with the police, the media, with repression.
For myself, I belong to these large currents of the non-institutionalized Italian left, which considered and still consider the Red Brigades as outside the movement. A movement which, by the way, the Red Brigades completely despise. What does it mean to leave the door open for dialogue with Stalinists? With the Red Brigades, Marxism comes up once again against the problem of anti-humanism, the problem of theoretical anti-humanism turning into practical anti-humanism through blind violence.
The question is to understand that this type of violent movement is only just one element, and that there are many more brewing and organizing on all sorts of levels. It is with these that we must enter into dialogue.